Good evening, and welcome to Soluble, America's Political Central. Now, we've been discussing the issues that are on the voters' minds heading into the midterms, and we're 14 days out, people. We're 14 days out. It's time to get fired up. It's getting into the now and never stage for voting turnout for Democratic voters here in America. Foreign policy is going to be an issue that we cover tonight. We've dealt with crime, we've dealt with the economy, healthcare, and tonight we want to touch on our point of view here at Soluble as far as what foreign policy in America represents from the right and what foreign policy, once again, in America represents from the left. Now, foreign policy is something that in America, we really need to take very serious. And, it should be one of the leading issues that we think about going into the voting booth on November the 8th, or, with early voting starting here today in the great state of Florida. Because, America is number one. I didn't really realize that until I moved here to the city of Jacksonville some years back. And, since being here, I've met a lot of people from foreign countries, all over the world: Poland, Russia, Germany. I've met all kinds of foreign people. And one thing that they all tell me is that, there's no place in the world like America. So that tells me that, as I said, America is number one. So in order to stay number one against our rivals now, and we are dealing with foreign policy here, number one's a hard spot. And, other countries want to be it, of course. And therefore, foreign policy can play a major role in how long we stay number one, if we stay number one as a country. We have China out here lurking, North Korea lurking, Russia lurking. They all want to, take our spot. Now, if you go back, with foreign policy, I'm a Jimmy Carter enter into politics, guy, as far as my age is concerned. That's when I really begin to consider, remember politics and what was going on in America. Now, of course, President Carter, he got hated so hard for welcoming in some guy, a person that Iran hated. So, of course, he got caught up in the hostage crisis there. And it was terrible for foreign policy under Democratic leadership. And, we have to realize that it wasn't so much that Iran feared Reagan as much as they hated Carter for his alliance with somebody that they had ostracized or considered a pariah in the country of Iran or in Iranian politics, clerical circles, or whatever. I don't have his name at this time, but if you do your research, you'll realize that they hated this guy. They really had a strong condemnation for him, and President Jimmy Carter wrapped his arms around him, and so that was the beginning of the hostage crisis in Iran. Foreign policy once again. And as I said, it could if you look back, in history, not trying to rewrite it, but trying to call it like it is here at Soluble. We're trying to call balls and strikes as we see them. It wasn't so much, like I said, it made the appearance that Carter was weak when it came to foreign policy, but he made a blunder, and he underestimated Iran's dissatisfaction with this guy, and it really came back to haunt him. But moving on, If you don't want saber rattling, if you don't want invasions, if you don't want false intelligence that could lead America into war, you have to really, think long and hard about a Republican vote when it comes to foreign policy. Now, it can appear that we're biased because, we're staunchly Democrat here at Soluble. We're staunchly Democrat. So it can appear that we're biased. But as I said, we're going to try to call this as balls and strikes as much as we can. Carter appeared weak. He was made to appear weak in that moment. And we're going back there to give you a forward thinking, if you will, of what's happened in foreign policy as it relates to Democratic administrations and Republican administrations, which have led the country from Carter and thus far. So, as I said, calling balls, calling strikes. It appeared that Carter was weak on foreign policy when he actually wasn't. But he underestimated the hatred and disdain that Iran had for this guy. So moving forward, as I said, invasions, deals behind closed doors, backroom deals that compromises our intelligence seekers out in the field, as it relates to the CIA. If you don't want, as I said, saber rattling, invasions, wagging the dog, you don't want to push the switch for Republicans as it relates to foreign policy, because that's what you're going to get. You're going to get the type of leadership that doesn't want to consult with our allies abroad. They want to take a go it alone approach. And that's not good in this day and age. That's not good in this day and age. We'll have blood and treasure, American blood and treasure, being wasted and spilled where it's not really necessary. And it is what it is. This is what has happened. You had the Iran Contra scandal. You've had the invasion of Kuwait. You've had the invasion of Iraq, when we've taken our eye off the ball when it comes to Osama bin Laden. And by the way, it took a Democratic president to bring Osama bin Laden to justice for the atrocities that he committed on September 11, 2001. You have President Trump coming into office, and without no rhyme or reason, he has to have his saber rattling moment, as I've just named in previous former Republican administration. He goes into Yemen. He wags the dog over there where there's and our intelligence officials, our people on the Joint Chiefs of Staff was saying that there was nothing in Yemen that was worth American lives and blood. But yet the president had to have his moment. He went over in Yemen. As soon as he got in office, he went over into Yemen, wagged the dog, got a family's kid killed. For what? For what? Just for a notch on his gun belt. What's going on here? So, straightforward foreign policy. Somebody who's going to give it to you straight and be a straight shooter. We don't know what we don't know what we're getting from Republicans. We don't know if the books are cooked on intelligence when it comes to foreign policy. Now, here you have a war in Ukraine. You have the previous administration, Republican, by the way, taking taxpayer money that's already been allocated to send to Ukraine and holding it hostage. Holding taxpayer money for ransom, for bribes. For what? To dig up dirt on his political opponents here at home. Come on, people. Come on. We have 14 days. We have 14 days until we make a decision as to whether this country is going to keep a Democratic majority or if we're going to change. Now, we've only had 2 years of Democratic leadership here. 2 years. And as a country, we have to be patient. You have rumors, you have whispers now. The president shouldn't run. The president doesn't know what he's doing on the economy. This is beyond Democratic or Republican control. But yet, you're going to have Republicans, clamp down on it, double down on it. Oh, it's the Biden administration. It's his policies. It's not that. It's a post-COVID world that we're just coming out of. So it's still in the early stages of a post-COVID world, and it's going to take some time to get the machine rolling again. And the machine is a beast of a machine. It's heavy. It has a lot of parts. It has a lot of bells and whistles. So in order to get this big machine rolling again that we call the economy, we have to be patient. Now, with the war in Ukraine and the previous administration, trying to do bribes with the president of Ukraine, this did nothing to weaken the president of Russia's resolve that, invading Ukraine would be a bad idea. Think about this. That's what we're here at Soluble asking you to do. Think about it. It is what it is. We're calling it like we see it here. I've named Republican administrations where it's like a bloodlust. It's like an eagerness to get America embroiled in some kind of armed conflict abroad. Whether we go it alone, whether we consult our allies, it doesn't matter. Just give me the results. This is dangerous. This is dangerous for us as a democracy because, for number one, as I said, we are number one as a country in this whole wide world, where foreign countries look for guidance. They look to say, who do we want to be like as a country when it comes to economic power, rights, the voice of the people being heard. No other country compares right now. No other countries compare. I mean, you have fledgling democracies, not counting, Europe. You have fledgling democracies, not counting Great Britain, if you will. But America is number one. And in order to stay atop the mountain, we have to be real careful about how we deal with our foreign adversaries as well as our foreign allies. It's a constant chess game. It's not just go it alone strategy. Go in with false intelligence, cooked up books on threats that don't exist. This is what we've got. So, as I said, it may seem biased here at Soluble because we're staunchly Democrat. But if the Democrats are dropping the ball on foreign policy, we have to call it out. We have to call it out. President Obama should never have drawn a red line in the sand when it came to Russia being in Syria and not backed it up. We acknowledge that. That was a weakness in leadership. That was a failure of leadership. That was a president, being loose at the controls. We acknowledge it. So, as I said, there's no biasness. It's, we're calling it like we see it. And the way we see it here at Soluble when it comes to this issue, in 14 days, it will be, one of the things that we have to consider going forward, as well as crime, the economy, healthcare, All these things are relevant to keep America powerful, keep America at the forefront of leading the world in democracy. The voices of the people being heard, whether it's here or abroad. We set that example. And as I said, I've met a number of foreigners who have come to this country, legally immigrated to this country, and they all tell me the same thing, that there's no place like America. So, to be kidding ourselves, to be unintelligent, to not look at it for what it is on its face, going into the midterms in 14 days. Right now, you have Kevin McCarthy, the minority House leader, already talking about possibly withholding funding for Ukraine. Is he giving us reasons like, it's hurting the American economy, it's adding to our deficit? Give us reasons. But at the same time, give us solutions also, because that's what we're here. That's what we're all about here at Soluble. Give us a solution to the problem that is a good chance. It's a high probability that it wouldn't be happening the way it's happening right now in this country of Ukraine. And it's a sad fact that we had a weak leader who was more interested in bribing a foreign leader. This is foreign policy. This is foreign policy 101 under the previous administration. To bribe a foreign leader and withhold aid, withhold funding. Now, as Americans, are we going to kid ourselves to think that, okay, Vladimir Putin is not watching this? He's not watching the leader of the free world make a mockery out of another free country in Eastern Europe. He's watching this. And what does it do? What does this type of foreign policy do coming out of America for an adversary like Vladimir Putin and his Russian policies? What does it do? It emboldens him. It emboldens him to invade. And there we have it today. Now, who's left to try to clean it up? Who's left to try to combat it? Stand tall against it? Rally our allies abroad? A Democratic president, none other than Joseph R. Biden, had to step in and save the day. He started putting out intelligence reports, not only to the American people, but to the world. Last year, this time, maybe September, as early as August or some point in time last year, he started putting out intelligence briefing reports, satellite imagery of Russia lining up on the border, prepping for an invasion of Ukraine. So he's left to clean it up. And there you have it. Just a small sampling. A small sampling of a tale of two administrations. One Democrat, one Republican. One Democrat, one Republican. Stance when it comes to foreign policy. You don't have to just take our word for it here at Soluble. I'm pretty sure if we could talk to President Zelensky, he would tell you which one was more honorable, which was the more honorable act, which was the more honorable thing to do as the leader of the free world, trying to help other countries to be free, trying to lead other countries to stronger freedom. That's what the president right now is doing. That's what he's trying to do. He's not toying with people's lives, toying with people's well-being by withholding funding that the American taxpayers, the American people have already approved. "14 days, people, and it's no time for the faint or weak of heart, especially with Negroes in America. When we turn out, as I've told you, we usually get our choice of candidate. when we turn out in large numbers. And it may seem like work. It may seem like it's a bother. It may seem like it doesn't matter. But, it's either the ballot or the bullet. Now, we have to try the ballot first, even though, we have Republicans hard at work on the right, trying to take away our right to vote. It's coming up in a tainted Supreme Court this year. And a tainted Supreme Court, voting rights being threatened. This is not what happens under a majority rule. This is a majority rule that occurs when people don't vote. This is where we're at now. This is how the Supreme Court got tainted in the first place. So when it comes to foreign policy, some of the intelligence reports are putting out that, President Putin is threatening nukes, threatening the use of nukes. Where do we go from here? Are we going to keep doing the same thing over and over? Are we going to backspin or are we going to forward spin? That's the question we have to ask ourselves before we go into the voting booth when it comes to foreign policy. In any other issue that affects our everyday American lives, that affects the country, that affects our standing in the world. We had, foreign leaders, allies and adversaries alike, wanting to know what's happening in America under the previous administration, which just happened to be a Republican. This is not biasness. This is not favoritism for one's party. We here at Soluble, we came into being as the last of a guardrail, if you will, because democracy started to veer off the tracks seriously, under the Trump administration. And so that's why we felt the need to come into being. And we're looking for the solution to all things. Because, we feel here at Soluble that we as people, if we can create a problem, we can create a solution if we really put our hearts and minds to it. Foreign policy. There was a time, do you remember a time back when President Clinton was leaving office? And, Ken Starr was giving him up and down the country as far as trying to find some dirt on him. Whitewater wasn't working. The Paula Jones affair wasn't working. Nothing wasn't working to bring Bill Clinton down. And, Ken Starr went into an immoral act, an immoral sleuthing, detectiving, if you will, to go into this man's personal life. And President Clinton, he took a shot at bin Laden back then. And, this is foreign policy 101. While President Clinton was being attacked from the right on personal matters because they hated the man's guts so much that they couldn't find nothing on him politically. Nothing about his policy would bring him down or smear him. He had America on the right track. So they went so low as to go and attack the man as far as something that was personal in his personal life. And he took a shot at bin Laden, as I said. And on his job, despite being under attack, on his job when it comes to foreign policy. And everybody from the right, if you recall, if you want to do revisionist history, he's wagging the dog. He's trying to distract. He's doing dangerous things for America. And actually, now we look back with hindsight, which is always 2020, and the former president was doing his job, even though he was being persecuted in the right-wing media, in right-wing investigative techniques, operations. He was being persecuted. He was being demagogued. And he still did his job with bin Laden. Now, as I said, hindsight is always 2020. Was he wagging the dog, or was bin Laden a serious threat? Fast forward a little bit. He leaves a memo for the incoming Republican administration. That's a key operative word here, Republican administration. He leaves a memo for the incoming administration that Al Qaeda is determined to strike within the United States of America. What happened? What happened? Did the incoming administration drop the ball on foreign policy? And if so, we see the deadly consequences of it. They're so partisan. They're so dead set on revenge, personal revenge, and using, American lives and our soldiers for it, that bin Laden struck anyway. Why? Why? Who was doing their job there? Democrats or Republicans? I mean, don't get me wrong. We want both. We want both. And the past is the past. But we see the deadly consequences of a Democratic president doing his job, protecting America from all enemies, foreign and domestic. Accused of wagging the dog just for doing his job. Leaves office after 2 terms. Leaves information, leaves memos for the incoming administration. But there are no good targets in Afghanistan. There are no good targets in Afghanistan. Folks, we see the deadly consequences. We see the deadly consequences 9 to 10 months later. We see them. We know what happened. We celebrate it every year on September 11th. There's an anniversary to chalk up. We see it. So, this is foreign policy 101. Do we want blunders? Do we want blunders coming from the right? A partisan right so blinded with partisanship that they'll take their eye off the ball and take the eye off the ball at the peril of American lives, American blood, bombing of our infrastructures, bombing of our federal institutions. This could have been prevented, folks. This could have been prevented. So you ask yourself, 14 days out, 14 days, going into who's going to be the majority of rule in this country. This is what happened when it comes to foreign policy, when it comes to approaches to foreign policy, when it comes to taking the information that your predecessors has left and act upon it. Use all available intelligence means to act upon it, to thwart an attack, to prevent any attack from happening here at home. Here at home. Now, is this biased partisanship, this blinding, raging partisanship that gives Republicans the attitude that they don't want to cooperate? That information is all wrong. I don't need to look into that. I don't need to follow up on that. That's just liberal. That's just liberal spin. Those are just liberal talking points in order to try to, score points for the next election. This is the Republicans thinking. And this is why they ignore it. This is one of the reasons it was ignored by the incoming administration when President Clinton left office. The incoming administration being a Republican administration. They are the ones who really want to wag the dog. They are the ones who really want to wag the dog. Before the former president, President Trump, could get all of his luggage into the White House, he was already sending orders out to go into Yemen. For what? For what? What did it gain us? What did it give us? What did we gain by that invasion? When members of the Joint Chiefs of Staff were already saying that there was nothing there. There was no there that was worth American blood. But yet, before this president could get all of his luggage into the White House, he was already sending out orders, putting our soldiers in harm's way. For nothing. Just for a notch on his gun belt. This is the Republican way, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Republican way when it comes to foreign policy. Go back as far as you can. As far as I can go back is the Carter years, to Ronald Reagan, Iran-Contra, foreign matters, dirty dealing, hiding things from the American people, covert operations that we don't know nothing about as a country, as a people. This is a one-man show. This is Ronald Reagan being king for a day. And it's the Republicans' way. Still right up to now. From then to now. What's changed? You see it. You see the saber rattling. You see the yearning for an invasion. A yearning for a reason to invade. The former president assassinating military leaders of foreign countries. Just straight up assassinate. This is dangerous, folks. This is dangerous for American officials traveling abroad. This is very dangerous. What could Soleimani have done to us? His power, his reach was no further than Iran. Maybe some Shiite, militia groups here or there, but no threat to America. No direct threat to America. But with this act of taking Soleimani out, Iran rained down missiles on American troops in Iraq. What was it all about? What was it all for? What was the Iran government with Soleimani at the head planning? What did they have in the working stages that we needed as a country to take him out? When it comes to foreign policy, folks, it's not a blood sport. Might doesn't make right in the case of foreign policy. That's not good foreign policy. It only weakens us abroad. And it weakens us as a country. Because oftentimes we go into these situations that are made up, fabricated intelligence, conjured up by Republicans. We send our guys into harm's way with no clear objective to get in and get out. And these guys are trained killing machines. But yet we would send them into harm's way, send them into foreign wars, foreign conflicts, with no clear objective. And, once again, there you have it. Obama was wrong. Obama showed weakness when he drew a red line in the sand with Syria. What else? What else do we have? As I said, it wasn't so much that Jimmy Carter was weak on foreign policy. It's just that the Iranians had grew to hate him because he put his arms around some guy that they really had, a massive amount of hate for. And so they grabbed up American hostages. But it wasn't so much that they feared Reagan as much as it was that they hated Carter. Unless you're prepared to tell me here, unless some Republican out there or some American citizen, if you will, that is on the other side of the argument, can tell me that had Reagan been in the White House when Carter was and done the same thing, that they wouldn't have took the hostages under Reagan's leadership. Are you prepared to tell me that? I think not. Had Ronald Reagan been president when Jimmy Carter was and wrapped his arms around some guy that the Iranian clerics hated, the same thing would have happened. The same thing would have happened in all likelihood. So, as I said, it's balls and strikes. We're looking for a solution here. Even though, ironically, we're Democrat here at Soluble, if the Republicans have the solution, bring it forward. Bring it forward. What would a Republican majority after the midterms that would stop funding for Ukraine or withhold funding for Ukraine, what would it benefit the United States? Would it benefit us more or would it hurt us more? Because if Putin wins in Ukraine, he's not going to stop. Right now, intelligence on the ground leads us to believe that he could be trying to infiltrate Norway. Because that is a country that can keep him broke, possibly, when it comes to the fact that Norway has gas to sell. They have, something that will take the place of what European countries are no longer buying from Russia. Could possibly be now found in Norway. So there is Vladimir Putin, possibly, in all likelihood. The intelligence has not conclusive at this point in time. But is it a chance that he's in Norway? Is it a chance that he has spies there, infiltrators on the ground, ready to pounce, ready to sabotage? So how would a Republican majority in 14 days, ask yourself this, and try to find a comfortable answer within yourself. Try to find a comfort in knowing that there's going to be peace in the future. How would withholding or stopping altogether funding for Ukraine as it tries to defend itself against this bully, how would it be beneficial for the world? How would it make us look as far as in our foreign policy? Would it make us weaker when it comes to foreign policy, or would it make us appear stronger when it comes to foreign policy? I mean, this money, is it goes and then comes back like a revolving circle. And if we have Democrats in office, if we have Democratic leadership now in President Biden, who's giving Ukraine a blank check with no requirements to pay back in the future once things become stable, then we have to call them out on that. But I think not. Our position here at Soluble is that we feel that this money goes out and then in the long run it comes back in to what? The number one country in the world. The country that every other country wants to be like. Our foreign adversaries, the leaders of these foreign countries, they hate us so because their own citizens love America. And every day, it makes it a little bit more harder for these foreign leaders to suppress these citizens who are in countries that are not democracies. It makes it a little bit more harder to suppress them when they can look and see what's going on in America. So, our credibility is on the line. It would be in our best interest right now to continue to be a staunch ally along with Ukraine. Because Putin is wrong. He's wrong. And he has no respect for weakness. He has no respect for weakness. And If in 14 days we turn foreign policy over to a Republican majority, then that's what we're going to have in the eyes of Putin and his cronies, that America's weak, or that we have leadership in America now that is going to look the other way as we go ahead and do what we need to do in Ukraine. Trust me, Putin knows the difference between Democratic leadership in America and Republican leadership here in America, especially in the last 6 years. Especially in the last 6 years. He helped Trump get elected, and Trump, didn't have nothing but nice things to say about it. Never called him out. Something unprecedented in American history. You haven't had a president in our lifetimes or before that hasn't called Russia out, that is not considered Russia a foreign adversary. They're spying against us. They're attempting sabotage. They're doing threatening things to our fighter jets that are out patrolling in international waters. Not over Russia-controlled waters. They're out doing threatening maneuvers and tactics with their fighter jets, with their ships, in foreign international waters. This is Russia. And as I said, if Putin sees weakness, he pounces. He doesn't relent. He doesn't say, okay, now let's go to the negotiating table, because they're showing signs that they want to back down. If you're backing down when it comes to Putin, then he's going to double down. So 14 days. A constant reminder here, we have 14 days until the midterms. And we need turnout. We need turnout from the Democratic side. Lest we forget. Unless we forget. Because the Republican approach hasn't changed. It hasn't changed when it comes to foreign policy. It can't be trusted. We don't know if the books are cooked. When it comes to the intelligence gathering, when it comes to what they're putting out to the press, we don't really know. We can't sleep good at night knowing that the Republicans' approach or the Republicans' intent to invade are based on solid evidence, solid proof, and that it's in America's best interest. We don't know that. It comes out as a scandal. It always comes out as a scandal. Or something that is full of questions. And it has more questions than it does answers as to why we're doing this. It has more questions than answers as to why we're doing it. If George W. Bush's foreign policy was so good and so right on and so beneficial to the American people, why couldn't he go out on the campaign trail when his term was up? Why couldn't he go out on the campaign trail when his term was up? Senator McCain didn't want him nowhere around. The late, great Senator McCain wanted him nowhere around. Mitt Romney didn't want him nowhere around. And it wasn't just foreign policy. We know what happened there going out of the George H.W. Bush years, when he almost broke the American dollar down to the value of a peso. But foreign policy, folks, foreign policy. We're number one. We're the leader of the free world, indeed. I used to wonder how. I used to wonder, what was the evidence of it? But I've met many foreign people down here in the great city of Jacksonville. And they all say the same thing. So it was a light bulb moment for me. I began to realize how much people all over the world who didn't necessarily live under it enjoyed democracy, living in a country or countries where the people had the say by vote. And it wasn't a rigged vote. It was a free and fair election. So that's why foreign policy is so important. To not just for the fact that we're number one, but more important to remain number one in the world. And as I said, we have to be careful how we navigate foreign policy because, our adversaries are out there waiting for us to slip, waiting for us to forget, waiting for us to take our eye off the ball. And they're ready to supplant us as the number one country in the world. And Republicans don't have a clue. As I said, if President Biden goes out of office and leaves a memo for an incoming Republican administration, right now we don't know what will happen based on the partisan biasness that we've seen in years past and the repercussions afterwards, the consequences afterwards with 9/11. This is important, folks, because even though Osama bin Laden is no longer, the threats are still there. They're evolving on a regular basis because America is number one. And it's a work in progress by our foreign adversaries to dethrone us. It's a work in progress. So what does that mean? It's happening on a regular basis. It's happening daily. They're trying to test the waters. They're trying to sabotage. They're trying to do intelligence theft. They're trying to take, our computer capabilities and use them to spy on us. Try to take them and make them up in their own country, enhance them whatever way. Intelligence property theft. China is hard at work at it. China's hard at work at it. And so, where do we go? If we want to go up and not down or backwards, because you're going to get more of the same. You're going to get more of the same. Now, President Biden has not only talked tough, but he's walked the walk. For the first time since World War II, we have the 101st Airborne with boots on the ground on European soil. So the president is making all the right moves because, number one, he's consulting with his Joint Chiefs. He's not a president who takes, the attitude that, I know more about Iraq than the generals. I know more about, foreign policy than the generals. He's not taking that approach. He's not ego tripping here because he realized, real lives are at stake. He's consciously aware of that, unlike the previous administration. And when it was happening, the Republicans did nothing. They did nothing. They did little to nothing to stop it, to draw a line in the sand, to say no more. They let President Trump have his way. And I use that term lightly because he acted so unpresidential during his 4-year term. But they let him have his way. On the world stage with Vladimir Putin, and he rather more or less side with Vladimir than with his own intelligence gatherers at the CIA. On the world stage. And that's the type of foreign policy approach that had our allies and people who have looked up to America as an example of integrity, defenders of law and order. They had them looking at it as like, what's going on here? What is happening to America? This is not the America we know. This happened under the Republican administration. And the best hint that we can get right now is that, Speaker McCarthy is saying that, hey, we may need to stop funding. We may need to withhold funding. And Russia can't win. They can't beat Ukraine on the ground. So why would we want to stop something or withhold something that's causing a major thorn in our side as far as a foreign adversary who's constantly hacking or trying to hack into our systems? Putting ransomware, around some of our valuable systems here to say, pay me this here, or, I'll continue to hold it hostage. I'll continue to seize it up. This is Russia. Now, they've taken on Ukraine. They've taken on the task, orders under Vladimir Putin to invade. And Ukraine is winning. Ukraine is winning. So why would it be wise foreign policy to hold up aid when a win for Ukraine in this particular war, in this particular invasion, if you will, a win for Ukraine is a win for the United States of America? Because this is a foreign adversary. This is a foreign adversary. Vladimir Putin right now is holding Americans hostage for no reason, for trumped up charges on Brittany Griner, Paul Whelan. And Putin thinks it's funny. It's a sport to him to just grab up innocent American citizens in his country and hold them hostage, hold them in jail, hoping that America will give him a trade option that he likes for somebody from Russia that's locked up for spying, for copyright infringement, whatever they may be doing over here, and getting caught at it legitimately. It's taken before the courts. In Russia, Putin is the courts. He's the judge, jury, and in cases where it benefits him, he's the executioner. So a win for Ukraine is a win for America because Putin is not our friend. And he hasn't shown an intention to be since he's taken over rule of Russia. They're slowly going back behind the Iron Curtain. They're slowly going back behind the Iron Curtain. And if we withhold funding, if we weaken Ukraine's ability to defend itself, that's not going to be good for us here in America. It's not going to be good. We need to ally with free countries all around the world. That's what we're about here, spreading democracy wherever the people will accept it. And that's what's happening in Ukraine. At the breakup of the Soviet Union, they were declared free. And while it was established, it was granted, and the rest of the world moved on, now you have Vladimir Putin wanting to take us back. And the world has moved on. Ukraine has moved on. They're a free, independent country now. So 14 days out, and nuclear war is at stake. World hunger is at stake. Foreign threats being emboldened, being strengthened, being heavily armed is at stake. You have a Democratic president, you have Democratic leadership right now in America, leading America through a foreign crisis, even though we're not involved in it. But it's good leadership for us here at home as Americans because the president is listening to his advisors. He's listening to the experts, the people who do this on a regular basis. He's listening. He's taking their advice. If I want to learn how to throw the perfect curveball in baseball, I don't go to a quarterback. I don't go to a quarterback. Think about it. The president is focused in the right direction because he's listening to a panel of experts, to a panel, if you will, of intelligent people who have America's best interests in mind, along with Ukraine, but America first. And if those people are telling the president that aid for Ukraine is in the best interest of America, then that's what the president should be doing. Has Kevin McCarthy, has he talked to military leaders and experts before he just came out and made that statement? Partisan blindness, partisan biasness, folks. You see what it got us when you had an outgoing Democratic administration in William Jefferson Clinton, handing off information, giving intelligence memos, briefings, leaving them with the incoming President George W. Bush, Republican. We see what happened. We see what the partisan biasness got us. So, 14 days, and we actually take a long look at it. Turnout for this reason, amongst others. We're looking for huge turnout here. For this reason, amongst others. Foreign policy is best when it's in the hands of well-rounded thinkers, rational thinkers, leaders who are going to come to the American people with the truth, with the facts, not cooked up intelligence, as what happened before the Iraq invasion. And the Republicans said nothing to stop it. They did nothing to try to stop it. They just went along with the party drumbeat. Country be damned. And that's where we're at. That's where we're at. Are we going to look at ourselves as voting for the best interests of the country, or getting out to vote for the best interests of the party or some political ideologues? We have 14 days. And this is what it is when it comes to foreign policy. This is what it is. Do your research. As we always state here at Soluble, because we're looking for a solution. We're not trying to keep it stirred up. We like the dust settled. And good, honest debate, we feel, is the best remedy for the settling of the dust. Good, honest debate. Now, that's where it's at, ladies and gentlemen. That's where it's at. Reagan, Iran-Contra. George H.W. invading Kuwait. Invading Iraq. Invading Kuwait. George H.W. invading Iraq. Because the president of Iraq at the time possibly tried to kill his dad. That's our foreign policy approach. We're on revenge tours now. It's not in our best interest, folks. It's not worth the blood and treasure there. We have other ways of dealing with foreign adversaries who threaten our leaders, and talk is cheap. But we have ways of striking back, more covert ways, more ways of ambiguity. What do the Republicans know about it? What do they know about an ambiguous approach when it comes to foreign policy? To keep our adversaries guessing. Just go in recklessly. Just drive in, just go in with shock and awe. Where did it get us? Where did it get us? What is the country of Iraq today? Is it Shiites and Sunnis, holding hands and saying kumbaya? What did it get us for all the deaths, for all the money that was spent there? And it's not revisionist history, it's just to take you back to show you from then to now the pattern, if you will, to show you the pattern that has it changed? As I said, if we have a Republican majority now, chomping at the bits, waiting, and one of the first things we want to do is withhold aid from Ukraine. Is that good for America? Is that what's in America's best interest? I mean, of course, we know it's not in Ukraine's best interest, but maybe, just maybe, the Biden administration is doing this because they know at the end of the day that it's in America's best interest that Ukraine win this invasion, that they win. And right now they are winning. And a weak Russia can only benefit America. A militarily weakened, with dead soldiers, equipment blown up, mutiny on the bounty when it comes to the soldiers. This can only benefit a free country. This could only benefit democracy as it relates to spreading around the world and the voice of the people being heard versus people having to flee their homes. It started out with Ukrainians fleeing across the border to Poland, to whichever neighboring country around there, Romania, whichever neighboring country would take them in. Now you have, fast forward, you have Russian citizens fleeing their country. Is this good? Is this good for humanity? Take time out to look at it in other ways other than how Putin feels about, people getting too close to Russia. Neighboring countries NATO getting too close to him and this and thus and such. If it's the will of the people, then NATO will expand. No matter what Putin does. He's not going to be able to bomb NATO into submission. He's not going to be able to nuke NATO off the face of the earth. And a nuclear war is no good for anyone. It's not good for anyone in this situation. So, it should be obvious. It should be obvious after we've laid it out here tonight. And, we know that there are voters on the right. There are voters who are Republican that, are going to vote no matter if it's a yellow dog running for office. Same thing on the Democratic side. No biasness. But before you put biasness in it, before you put partiality in it, look at what the parties are doing and how one may benefit the country versus not benefiting the country. On both sides. Look at what the Democratic Party is doing. Is it benefiting foreign policy or is it non-beneficial for foreign policy? And the same thing with the right. And make the decision. Make the decision going into the voting booth. We have 14 days. And, everything is at stake. The future of a greater. We're already great. And it wasn't because of a MAGA movement. We were already great. But in order to become greater and greater, we're going to have to, first of all, we have to have a huge turnout. And voting people into office, no matter what political stripe, that's not really what it's about here at Soluble. Voting people into office, if it's someone on the right who's honest, who has integrity, who has America's best interest in mind, we're firmly for them. If there's anybody on the right who possesses that still today, somebody like say Liz Cheney, bless her heart. I never thought I would have anything politically in common with a Cheney out of Wyoming. But we need more like her now. In this point in time in history, we need more like her. And if we got them and they're bringing legislation, if they're bringing good bills to the floor, then, you know, we hope and pray that Democrats will work across the aisle with her or with Republicans like her. Because that's definitely what we need in this day and time when it comes to foreign policy. You know, well-rounded thinkers, people of integrity, people that have America's best interests in mind. That's the order of the day. And that will keep us as a country greater or make us greater than what we are now. Good leadership, honest leadership, who are going to look the American people straight in the eye, give them the truth. The buck stops here type politicians. Say what they mean and mean what they say type politicians. So that's it, folks. You've seen the disasters. You've seen what it's cost taxpayers. You've seen the turmoil that's been stirred up around the world with weak foreign policy, ignorant foreign policy, go it alone foreign policy politics. We see what's happened. Russia's invaded. The government in Myanmar has failed. You know, think about it. It went from America having rigged elections and the elections are rigged to all of a sudden Myanmar discovered the same thing. And countries like Myanmar with a shaky democracy, they're waiting on something like that. But it shouldn't be coming from a place like the United States of America. But it was a great pretense. It couldn't have come at a better time. And you see what happened. That's the dangers of ignorant, failed, not forward thinking when it comes to foreign policy. That's the results of it. Of Myanmar. So get ready. Get ready. Take a long look at it. That's all we can ask of you. The solution, you know, we feel like between the two parties, who has the best solution for foreign policy going forward to make America greater, safer, stronger, and all the things that benefit us as a country? We feel like it's Democrats based on the history, based on the approach in foreign policy, assassinations, invasions into countries where, you know, it's not even worth our blood and treasure. There's no reason, there's no there. There's nothing of value or threat level there that we should sacrifice American lives, but yet we're there. The president hasn't even moved all of his luggage into the White House, and yet we're there. Why? When there's no threat there. When the threat level doesn't dictate that we be there. Why? We don't need this, folks. And it hasn't changed. It's a partisan blindness. It's a partisan saber rattling, if you will. They say, look at me, I'm a bad mother. And you know, it only does things that to weaken America abroad with our allies, with our foreign allies. It only weakens us when we take this approach. And it hurts families. You know, to have a child die in Yemen for no reason, for nothing. You made a sacrifice for nothing on a whim. And if you notice, when these Republicans, they get in office and they start doing this saber rattling and threatening invasion and ready to start stuff up, it's not their children. It's not their children or loved ones who are on the front lines. And if it was, they would think twice about it. So that's our conclusion tonight on foreign policy. We hope that we have shared some eye-opening information. We hope we have brought some things to light that will make you better informed on your decision making going into the midterm when you think about foreign policy and which party is best to lead America forward when it comes to foreign policy. Join us later in the week. Our next topic of discussion that's on the minds of American voters will be immigration. Immigration. That will be our next topic of discussion as it relates to how best to handle immigration, which party is best to deal with it, and deal with it, prepared to deal with it in a way that makes America stronger and better. This is Soluble, signing off. We thank you for joining us, and we look forward to continuing this discussion going into the midterms, which are 14 days away. And it's very important because, without the vote, we don't have a democracy. We will have anarchy. So we're looking for turnout. We're asking for turnout. In Georgia now, they're reporting record turnout. And that's good news for Democrats. We need to keep it up. We need to keep the same energy all across the nation because, liberty is on the ballot. Our freedoms that we cherish, speech, freedom of the press, freedom to assemble, petition for redress of grievances. All this is on the ballot, folks. So stay informed and stay tuned to Soluble. We thank you for joining us. We look forward to continuing discussion later in the week dealing with immigration. This is Soluble signing off. Good night.